everybody to today's session. Welcome. All right, there we go. Thank you so
Hey,
much.
hey.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for having us today and joining in. Today, we're going to talk about budgeting and managing your debt, one of my favorite topics of all time, Ethan. Today, my co host is Ethan, a financial advisor here with NFP and WealthSpire. Introduce yourself to us, Ethan.
Thanks, Angela. Appreciate it. Happy to be here. Thanks, everybody, like Angela said, for joining us. If it's your first month, then welcome to the group. We're excited to have you. If you're returning, welcome back, and we appreciate your support and listening to us and being a part of these sessions. By way of introduction, like Angela said, I am a financial advisor here. I work on our financial planning team with our wealth management group. I've been with the company for a little over 5 years now. This is my first time on the call, so I'm excited to be here. I've heard a lot about it. I've gotten to listen to a few, but Angela will take us away, get us started, and I'm excited to answer any questions you guys have.
Sounds good. And as far as questions, yes, please utilize the chat, everybody, to ask any questions along the way. We're going to be monitoring that chat. We're going to be answering your questions while we're talking during this live session. And also, I ask, please chime in. If this is a topic that's working for you, if you have your reins on your financials and you want to chime in with something that's working for you, please share because I think we're all will benefit from that. I think it'll be value added. You're also going to see a window, and that window is going to pop up with a survey. Take the survey at the end of the survey if you can. At the end of the survey, they'll ask you for a passphrase. The passphrase today is frosty, and that's going to be a good thing, especially if your company is giving you wellness points. So again, that passphrase is frosty. Having said all that with our housekeeping, let's get started with the session because again, it's one of my favorite topics: budgeting and financial and managing your debt. So it is so important for that. Budgeting is just making a plan for your money. It's knowing what your money is doing for you, where your money is going, right? And think of it as giving every dollar a job. That's what a budget does. I take my money in, where's my money going? I know that every dollar is where that dollar is assigned because that's going to be important. Now, people don't plan to fail, they fail to plan. And having a vision of what your budget is like today is going to help you know where you're going. Successful people, successful businesses use budgets, and so can you. And it's not very difficult to create that budget, as you can see in our next slides. But budgeting makes sure that you always have enough money for what matters most. Without a plan, it's easy to spend money that you don't have on things that you don't really need, right? It's about knowing my needs, knowing my wants, and planning for the today so that I can have a better future as well. And it's all about, again, having that plan and those essentials. Now, we're all different and we all have different challenges, but there's no one fits all financial wellness, right? We all know that we're going to have important categories in our budget, in our plan, in our vision. And by the way, if the word budgeting seems to be restrictive, call it something fun. I call my financial plan because I like to be fancy, right? But call it whatever you want to call it as long as you know that we're following the proper essentials, right? We need the essentials of spending. Where's my money going? Do I have the reins on that, right? Do I have my essentials of saving? Am I saving the amount of money that I need for my short term goals? Am I saving for my long term goals like my retirement? Am I saving for my child's future, right? It's all about having those essentials. And then, of course, my discretionary spending. Am I spending the money that I require for my needs while I maybe spend a little on some fun things? But there are three beautiful categories, and we're going to explore them all. Now, when we budget, we break spending into categories: the essentials, the savings, and discretionary spending, as I mentioned. Essentials are the needs, right? What do I need today? I'm going to need my mortgage or rent payment. I'm going to need my food, right? My resources for food and things. I'm going to need my essentials for clothing and commuting cost. And then I'm going to make sure that I plan for essentials by knowing exactly what each category money wise represents. And then I'm going to talk about savings, right? And my savings may be, again, for my short term, I'm going to save for a down payment on a car. I'm going to save because I'm going to buy a house in 5 years. I'm going to save in my retirement account because I know I'm certainly going to be retiring at the age of 62, 67, whatever that retirement age is going to be for you, but saving is an important part. And then discretionary spending. And that's where most of us, we're going to find some cost savings too when we create that budget. And discretionary spending may be my movies, my dinners out, my travel, my vacations, right? Things that are important to me, but I'm going to find some cost savings in those categories. Now, I'm going to have Ethan take us through each of the budgeting categories because I think it's going to be such value added. Now, I did look at the chat to make sure that I'm going to be able to answer the questions. I'll keep an eye on those chats. But thank you so much, everybody, for that. But Ethan, take us through those categories.
Yeah, thanks, Ange. And driving off what Ange said previously, it's important to remember we are all different, right? We all have different goals and priorities. And when talking about our budget, before we kind of get into these each individual category, it's really important to, and even later we're going to have a example of a budget that we're going to be able to go through if you want to take a picture of it, go through your own. But at the top of a budget, or even on a piece of paper, sticky note, if you want to throw it on your desk, it's important to just write out those goals. What are those priorities? So that as you go through each of these categories, and as we're talking through each of these, are each of these categories aligned with what your actual life goals and priorities are? Everybody's in a different stage. Everybody has a different fact set for their life, family, job, living situation. So it's important to keep that in mind. And that should really be the foundation and supporting each of these categories. So the first category of the three that Angela was talking about, essential spending, this is really our foundational, our non-negotiables. So we want to start with these and be realistic. And the first of those would be housing. That's going to probably be one of your biggest spends every month. That could be either rent, mortgage, and you have to also include things like insurance, taxes, your utilities. Um, and then you have transportation, right? We all have to get somewhere. We have fuel costs, car insurance, your maintenance. I know Ange likes to have her car serviced by her husband, even though, but she's still going to have to get her oil or for that change. So, what are those costs associated with transportation? Your food, and we don't want to include outside dining in the food category for this category. This is going to be more like groceries and your essential costs in that dining and food category. And then any additional dining and going out for drinks, food with friends, that's going to be in an additional discretionary, and we'll talk about it in a minute. And then finally, medical. And for a lot of us, that expense comes out of our paycheck regularly, but we might have additional premiums, co-pays, prescriptions. And so we'll be able to, we want to make sure those are all in that essential spending category. Now, two quick things just before moving on into the next category. When you're thinking about housing, we want to aim for healthy housing. And what does that look like? That's going to be around 25 to 30% is a general rule of thumb for your take-home pay should we be spending on housing. Now, I live in California, so I am totally with you when you say maybe your housing costs a little bit more than that. That's just a rule of thumb. So if you're outside the 25, 30%, that's okay. This is just something for you to have a guideline or a North Star for a trajectory in that category. And then another tip here, we want to smooth the spike. So not all of these categories are we going to have a perfect monthly amount that we're paying into. So we want to make sure we look at something like, let's say transportation, you get your bill annually for your insurance. Break that out into monthly payments and then set those aside so that you're not tripped up by a big cost later on down the road and you have to dip into something like savings, like we're going to talk about in a second. So keep in mind, these are all individual, unique to you. So if you fall outside those percentages, that's okay. Jumping into savings, we have two buckets essentially that we're paying into for our savings. And we want to treat these two buckets like another bill. This should be another really non-negotiable in your budget, and you should aim to pay yourself first, is like what I like to say. And Ange said it great. There's a quote, people don't plan to fail, they fail to plan, right? So if you don't have savings at the end of the day, you have failed to make a plan in that category. You want to make sure you are paying yourself first. So Your emergency fund really is going to be your rainy day fund. And we want to aim, as another rule of thumb, for 3 to 6 months of your essential spending category. So whatever you have in that essential bucket we just went over, multiply that by 3 to 6 months, and you'll get this emergency rainy day fund. And we can put aside, we like to say 5% until you hit that amount. And if that's too much, it's okay. Start with 1%, 2%. Every additional step you take today can make a little bit of difference for your future. And then your second bucket is going to be your retirement fund. This we want to aim, and our rule of thumb is 15%. People want to say, what is the amount we should set aside? 15% is what we shoot for. If you're doing more than that, fantastic. If you're like 15% seems insane, it's way too much. You got to start somewhere. If we want to start at 1%, 2% today, that's great. Time is really your biggest lever in this category. So the longer you have in that money in there, if you've been a part of our past sessions, we've talked about compounding interest. This is going to be your biggest friend in this category. If you could start today with even a small amount, we'll move towards that 15% as time goes on. So put automation to work. If you could set up with your bank an automatic payment from which you can often do from your checking account right after the day you get your paycheck into your savings, that is going to be your best friend. And we'll talk a little bit more about emergency fund in a minute, but those are going to be your two essential categories. Okay, so this is what we're talking about. These savings or these categories here, don't look at this and panic if you fall outside of these parameters. This is more just a framework, we like to say, but your essential expenses on a monthly basis should roughly hit around 50%. And then 15% in savings, like we just talked about, and 5% in short-term savings. And then outside of that should be your discretionary amount. Now, we don't have a slide for telling you how to spend your discretionary money. You all have different lives. We all like to spend, and you are in that category. But real bucket is that your 50 and 5% category in your retirement and your short-term savings should be your non-negotiable. So and your essential expenses. So if you file a little bit higher than that 50%, that's okay. But try not to pull from your short-term savings and steal from your future self by pulling that 5% in retirement savings. Try and see, and Angela's going to go down in the future in a little bit, how to cut down maybe on those other spending categories to make. Just circling back here on emergency fund, you're to think of it as your biggest stress reducer. This is going to be your 3 to 6 months, like we said, of essential expenses. And whether you have your emergency fund set up at the moment or not, try to increase that percentage until you hit that milestone. And then once you hit that milestone, you can free up for additional things like paying off debt, like we'll talk about in a minute, or putting additional percentage till you hit that 15%, if that's a little bit higher. But we want to make sure we emphasize that this emergency fund is really important to build up now so that you can prevent your high interest debt, taking out a loan, putting on a credit card for things that you weren't able to foresee previously. And the last thing I want to hit on just in that save, if you want to go back real quick, and in that savings account, we want to make sure that that money that we're putting into your savings account, you're aware of the interest that that account is building. This is one of the biggest sleepers you might have in your budgeting, in that if you haven't taken a chance to look at your savings account, if you're with one of these bigger banks, they might be paying less than a fraction of a percentage of interest on that amount, and you want it to still be liquid. So look into something like a high yield savings account where you're able to get that same level of liquidity. At some of these banks are now paying 3.5% to 4.5% on that account, so that it can grow and still be liquid and ready for an emergency, just like your savings account, but maybe pay a little bit higher. So please be aware of what you're getting paid currently on your savings account at your bank. You can usually find that through your statement or even just calling in if you can't find it through your app. And then just to round this out, this isn't exact science, but we want to really more have you see the flow here. And I like that this person that's earning in this example $4,000 a month of take home pay pays themselves first, right? They give that 5% automatic transfer that you are going to put immediately so that you out of sight, out of mind, you're paying yourself first, that $200 into your emergency fund, your savings. And then we're going to go into your essential spending, right? So you're going to have all of those essential categories before coming into your discretionary spending. And that's really what we want you to see here is that cadence. Pay yourself first, take care of your essential spending, and then see where it fits in for that extra discretionary dollars. And in this particular case, it's great. We have a surplus, right? We have a little bit of extra money to put into, right? What are those putting those extra dollars towards those goals? What are those priorities that makes you who you are in that in your unique place? Now, we're going to check the chat here. I think we have quite
We
a few
we
questions that
do.
came in. Ange, what
Yeah,
questions?
we do, Ethan, and one of them I know is gonna be for your expertise, but a brokerage account, when does it make sense to have it at our disposal?
Yeah, that's great. I
Mhm.
mean, we're focused today here really on these essentials, right? We want to make sure we're taking care of, right? First, we have your savings, your emergency fund, then we have these essentials. This example here where you have those additional that surplus dollars and you want to start setting up savings for the future, you might be able to put those dollars towards something like a brokerage account. But if you haven't set up that 3 to 6 months of savings, or you're not taking care of your monthly expenses consistently, uh, we want to make sure not to tie up those extra dollars into something where you might end up having to pay additional fees um, on top of those surplus funds when you need to use it for something like that. So if you have all of those things in a row and you have a surplus and you're wanting to plan for the future, we will have our information put up at the end. And if you'd like to look into more information at the end, we'd be happy to talk you through that, because that's going to a brokerage account is going to be something that's a little bit individual. But make sure you take care of those necessary steps, and then we can talk through those on a one-on-one basis.
And then the next question that came up was about managing credit card swipes and paying my credit card bills. And I always want to make sure and emphasize too that when it comes to credit that is granted to you, I would like not to be included as an extension of your income. Be wise with it. But I wonder what your thoughts are about credit, limits on credit, and how I pay my credit card bill every month and accounting that as part of my budget.
Sure. Yeah, and we're jumping the gun a little bit here.
Yeah,
We're going to actually dive into this a little bit later. So I think we'll actually answer that question later on in the slide. So I don't want to steal any
perfect.
thunder from us in the future.
Perfect. And for the emergency fund, I always say to everybody, include if you have a family, you can do it on an individual, but I think it's the family's expenses, right? What is the family's expenses for the 3 to 6 months that the experts recommend? So it includes um, everything that's within your budget. So it's going to account for your income, is going to account for all the expenses that you have for the month. And so, yeah, that would include a whole family. If it's individual, if it's just you, yeah, you're going to account for your expenses on an individual level. But if you're a family, please include the family's expenses. And then, of course, when we're talking about retirement accounts, it includes 401ks, IRAs, every retirement account that you have that you're going to be using that money towards your retirement future. With that, I'm going to take it on for the next few slides. Now, each category can be broken down further if we think about um, charity. So when we're looking at the budgeting category, you're going to account for everything on your budget. You're going to account for any church contributions that you make, donations, education missions, legacy planning should be part of your budgeting as well. Savings, we're going to include that emergency fund, the short term savings, mutual funds, college funds, right? I'm going to save for a child's college in 10 years and I want to get to 50,000. What does that equal in savings? Housing, mortgage, rent, taxes, insurance, repairs, things that we don't talk about, right? I'm dealing with a little repair here in my home too. We're dealing with our heating system. It is not a cost that I accounted for as part of my budget, but it's something that I saved for in my emergency fund. And I kind of give my emergency fund like a little extra for those expenses for car repairs. I include that as part of my budget. Utilities, of course, our electric, our water heating system, our cable, apps that you may have on your phone that you don't account for, Netflix at $14.99, I believe, right? All that needs to be added. Your internet, trash. If you're paying for trash services every quarter, I don't know if that happens within your town. When it comes to food, we want to account for groceries, restaurants, coffee shops, as simple as going to Starbucks. Hey, that's food. That should be included as part of my budget. And then, of course, debt management should be part of my budget, right? My car payments, my student loans, those credit card payments, because we just talked about credit cards. Yes, if I use a credit card and let's say I use it to pay my some of my expenses, like for my gas or whatever. But at the end of the month, I know that I keep within my budget. If I use my gas card and I get gas at $25 every week or so, at the end of the month, I know I'm going to pay $100 of that. So that's part of my budget. So it's accounting for everything. Not to miss anything because you don't want any surprises, especially when it comes to anything that you didn't account for. Additional budgeting categories, of course, transportation, right? Gas. I know I just mentioned that $25 a week is what my husband kind of puts in his car because he commutes to work. Auto insurance, that's part of my budget. Auto licensing. Yes, every year I go get my license plates or whatever registration fees, and those are, $120. Well, it's every year, but I account it as part of my budget. Repair cost, even though those repairs for a car tune-up that happens every 3 months or every 10,000 miles, account for that in your budget. Oil changes, all that matters, and you don't want any surprises. Clothing and expenses, yeah, kids, adults, if the kids are going into school and they need like school clothing, did you account for that? Even though you buy the school clothes in the late summer for starting in September, with whatever our adult needs are. Seasonal spending too. Something that has come up with my son as of recent is we live near a mountain for snowboarding, and so he had to buy his thing. And he was like, "Oh, mom, it's going to cost me like $500." And I'm thinking to myself, I hope he budgeted for that because it may be an expense that is seasonal. He didn't think about it throughout the year, but it should be considered part of your budget. And then, of course, medical expenses that come up. Co-pays, I pay $20 every time I go to the doctor. I should have that in my budget. My deductibles. But that comes with understanding too what my insurances are, right? Which I'm going to look at my medical and see what's covered so that I know that if I go to the doctor for regular well visits and I go twice a year and my doctor's going to be a $30 copay, did I account that in my budget? Disability insurance if I have it, life insurance, medicine, prescriptions, simple as um, because sometimes we write our grocery bill, and let's say I have um, a list of my budget. Did I account for medications? Because that's not food, right? That you know. So account for those medications, miscellaneous drugstore visits, uh, things of that nature that kind of add up, but normally people don't write them in their budget. And then that brings in personal care. Well, do you go to the barber? Do you go to the hairdressers? Ladies, do we get our nails done? Right? That's is value added, cost added. School supplies, we might get them every year, right? Before September comes around, did I account that as part of my budget? Alimony, if you're in a couple that and your spouse may have other children and they're not in your immediate household, but maybe there's alimony involved or there's child support involved. Are they accounted in your budget? Pet supplies, how expensive are our pets? We love them, but they are costly. I know I'm talking about my dog over there, Maxie Rose, but I have to say that pet supplies sometimes creep up. And also, do you have pet insurance? And how often do you take the pet to the vet? All should be part of your budget. And then, of course, do I go shopping at Walmart? Do I go shopping at Target? These are additional extra expenses. Gifts is a big one too. And then miscellaneous items. Entertainment, vacations, recreation should be part of the budget as well. So we're accounting for everything. We have budgeting worksheets that we work with. I know that we have them available in our websites. We are going to give you my contact information. I can always email a worksheet. Important to start simple. And again, accounting for everything, housing to electric, monthly expenses, write everything down, add additional slots if you need to add them. But it's important to account for your income. What do I bring in? Even if you do little side hustles, I do Uber twice a month. Whatever you do, account for your income. Put in your total expenses, any investing in savings, right? Your 401k savings and all that good stuff. And then do I have a surplus at the end? Because we want to make sure that we are living and having a little extra on the side, right? And how do I find, well, I live paycheck to paycheck. I don't have extras. Well, find within your budget where you can cut some everyday expenses. Maybe you don't go out to eat as much and cook at home. I don't know. Make it simple, right? And it's one of the biggest changes for me, Ethan, that I found in my budget is I brew my own coffee at home. I don't go and pay $5 for a cup of coffee when I know that if I brew it at home, the same quality of coffee, because I do like my Dunkin' Donuts coffee, I make my coffees at $1.60 a cup rather than buying it for $5 at the store. Just saying, but just cost savings along the way. Um, it is also important how to get started, just keep it simple. Write down your entertainment and keep it in a nice little envelope. Your gas money, you keep it in a nice envelope. Target and Walmart visits, you keep it in a nice little envelope. Groceries, expenses for kids, pets, and hobbies. And it's about having categories for your spending so that nothing comes in as a surprise. And it's just having control. Don't let your money control you. You control it by having specifics as to where your money is going. And then, of course, we're going to talk a little bit about debt, and and know the difference between good debt and bad debt. I know that good debt for me would be a student loan because I know I had to borrow, but I have college, and that college graduation gave me a career. So I find that to be very good debt. My mortgage, where I'm living there. That's the house that I live in. That's the rent that I pay so that I can live, a place for me to live. I find that to be good debt as well. Bad debt to me would be credit cards. Good if I have them under control. Not so good if I lose track, and I overspend on them. So know the difference, but we all have debt. Everybody has debt. The important thing is to control that too and keep an eye on what debt you have and all that good stuff. And that brings me to talk about how credit card debt can just add up. Okay. Now, with let's say a $15,000 debt at 14% interest rate, and you're paying $300 a month, by paying $300, it could take about 6 years to pay that off. And most of the money is going to go to interest, not principal. So keeping an eye on my cards, keeping an eye on my balances, keeping an eye on the interest rate, how long it'll take to pay me off, having that in control. And if I get into a little bit too much debt, we'll find budgeting tools and resources by speaking to us so we can help you get out of that debt and put a good place in debt management in place. Not all debt is equal, and good debt has low interest and it helps build value like a mortgage. Bad debt is high interest rates that you pay for things that may lose value. Yeah, I went and I bought ski equipment and I used my credit card and it didn't snow this year. So there goes beautiful equipment that it's now I'm paying high credit cards on that debt for something that I didn't use. So be wise with it, have control, and keep an eye on what's good debt, what's bad debt, but realizing that debt is part of life and we just need to control it. Now, to manage student loans, consider a couple of things. You might consider refinancing, you might consider loan consolidation. You can adjust your payment terms. You can start payments early before you even graduate, but don't be afraid to negotiate with lenders. I know that if you have your student loans, let's say with, the government loans, you get pregnant, you can defer payments. So understand the rules, the regulations behind it. Read up on that information. Know your choices. Know your options. when it comes to student loans and what is best for you. I know a lot of people, like a lot of young folks, and a lot of my sons have done it, is um, refinance to get bigger payments to get those loans out of the way in a couple of years, right? But what does it take? It takes you to do your due diligence and be budgeted and have your budgeting control, because the goal, number one, is to get out of student loan debt, right? But we're all different. We're all individuals. We all tackle debt differently. And it's important to have a conversation with us, and we'll guide you every step of the way. The snowball method of getting
Hey,
out of debt.
Ange, we have a couple questions, I
Oh,
think
yes, yes,
you
Ethan,
can
what
hop
are
in.
they? Sure.
We have, I know there was a budget sheet recommendation, and I know you have a budget sheet
Hmm.
you sent out, but outside the one that we had shown in the slides, what budget sheets would you recommend, if any?
I personally have a simple. Mine is on a spreadsheet, and I then transfer it over to my phone. So my budget sheet, it includes my income, how often my husband and I get paid, and I've broken down in out of my income and how often we get paid is what bills I get paid. And I negotiated payment schedules with my utilities, with my credit card companies, let's say. And so at the beginning of the month, I tackle, my mortgage. In the middle of the month, I do my car payments. At the end of the month, I do my credit cards. But I kinda have it in a simple spreadsheet. I like to keep my life simple, and I just have my income and all of my expenses, but I account for every dollar. Whether I go to the supermarket is accounted for. There's not a penny that I don't spend that I don't know where it's going. But we have simple spreadsheets that I can share, and then we have a little bit more, intricate, worksheets that we can certainly share, especially if people have like small businesses that they're dealing. Like some of us have little side hustles, and we want to account for that as well.
And I know Kelly, I think, mentioned that she was going to send out that sheet that was in the slides,
Okay,
but
good.
also we could send those additional ones
Oh,
if you want to make those available, Angela. That would be great.
oh, okay, perfect. Hmm.
Um, see if we have
Let's see if
any
there are any other
others.
questions.
They are recorded. Looks like Kelly sent out the link.
Sounds good.
Great. Yeah,
And
and good track
free,
about how
yeah,
baby gifts and wedding gifts are expenses. I appreciate that.
yeah,
We're in
they
that
are.
season where everybody we know seems to be having a baby, so that becomes a big line item.
Yeah. And for budgeting expenses, like Rocket Money is like a big one. Rocket Money, SoFi has great budgeting tools and resources. Yeah, so don't hesitate to use those apps too. I think that they're important.
Yeah, and Rocket
Um,
Money, I'm pretty sure has a free version. So you should be able, it might not get every feature, but they will tie directly to your bank
yeah,
statement. So it's a little bit easier to pull all those expenses that you might not even realize you're paying. Like you said earlier, with the
yeah.
subscriptions and the Netflix and all those different things that add up. I think it should pull in all of those additional expenses as well.
It does, and I think too, it's important to utilize all the tools and resources about debt management. But a couple of things to keep an eye on, like your banking institution, they offer you free credit score, right? Because that's a way of keeping an eye on your score and see how you're doing. And then if you become a member of like Experian, they give you your actual report for free every year. And that's a good way of keeping an eye on things too, because again, it's all part of like budgeting and having good financial sense is where are all my items that I can get. So please get your credit score from your banking institution, and then your reports from Experian. And becoming a member of those websites are free. So it's something that I use to keep an eye on things. When it comes to debt management, I want to continue with a couple more slides, is the snowball method, right? And it means paying off the smallest debt first. So if you have like five credit cards, pick the smallest one, then rolling that payment into the next debt, and it builds momentum and it feels rewarding because when you're dealing with the small debt first, or the credit card with the smallest balance, and you pay that off, it kind of like rewards you right away. So, oh, in 6 months I pay that off. Okay, great. I'll move on to the next one. So get motivated when it comes to paying debt. And there's no right, wrong way of doing it. But it's important to be consistent if that's what you're trying to do before things get worse with accumulating too much debt. And then there's the avalanche method, which focuses on the highest interest rate debt first, and it saves money over the long term. Now, it feels slower since you're tackling the big balances first. So I look at all my credit cards, and again, where do I get my interest rate on those credit cards when it's such fine print? Go on their website and you'll see that information. You'll see what the interest rate is, and you'll see too how long it'll take to pay off by paying minimum. Like, get all that information. And then once you figure that out, yeah, tackle the credit card with the highest interest rate and give it a jolt. So if the minimum payment on the first one is $100 and you have $200 out of your budget that you can play with, now you're going to pay 300 instead of 100. And that's how you start closing the length of time that it takes to pay off that debt. And then once you pay off the highest one, then you move on to the next one and so on. And again, a lot of tools and resources. This presentation is recorded so that you can have this print screen because again, it gives us a lot of great information on how to get started. And it's your they're your options. It is your money. If you find that something doesn't work, don't give up. Find a way that works to get out of high debt if that's what you have. And then if we look at when we're comparing both strategies, both snowball and avalanche, you'll see that the snowball is motivating because you see quick results, right? I win and I win quick. I paid off the one with the smallest debt because that worked for me and it's quick and I get results quicker. The avalanche saves you more money along the way because it's cutting down on interest payments, but ultimately you have to choose what's best for you because it is your personal view, it is your goal, and so you want to make sure that you be comfortable with it. So anyway, we're going to see if there are any more questions coming up, and then we're going to start closing.
I don't see any other questions here in the chat.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Now, along the way, I don't know if you want to take on and talk about some action plans and what are your opinions about creating a budget, debt management, and taking action.
Sure. Yeah. With especially with budgeting, just a short or debt management, you want to choose. There really is no best solution. You want the best solution is going to be the one that you stick with, and especially with your budget and things like inflation always occurring. All of those costs are continuing to increase. So this isn't something. Even if you set up a budget, let's say a year ago, 2, 3 years ago. This is something that you really want to revisit and keep up with. Those budgeting apps are fantastic because they keep it live. But if you are writing one out, which can be very helpful, you want to make sure you're going back and updating it, seeing where have those costs increased. Is it still falling within those parameters that we talked about previously for those rules of thumb in each of those categories? Am I sacrificing my savings? Am I in retirement account contributions because of my discretionary spends? And where can I cut back on those items to make sure that those get more aligned with where I want to be at retirement age or with my goals in the future? So really, like I said, you want to stick with the thing that is going to be best for you and the thing that and the debt strategy that you're going to be able to stick to, especially. So whether or not it's the snowball method where you're allocating all those extra dollars to the lowest card first for a quick win, and then maybe transferring over to the avalanche method where you're paying off those higher interest rates first and then moving on. You can even have a hybrid approach like that where you can give yourself small wins quickly and then move on to those higher interest rates to try and capitalize on paying less interest over time. So really, it's the strategy that you want to that's going to work best for you, and consistency is the word we're looking for. Consistency is key in having a budget and debt strategy that works for you. So just putting these into an action plan like we have here, we want to create, if you can, at the least today, create 3 priorities as a takeaway. Don't let this get too far away in your mind where you end up putting it out, especially going into the holidays. I think our budget can go, or at least mine, and for sure with my wife, can go out the window when gifts kind of come around and you end up spending on the holidays and travel. Check in with yourself and then check in with yourself again in the new year to see how closely you stuck with those strategies and that action plan. And list out those balances, list out your rates and your minimums and your next payment date so that you can strategize efficiently what payments are going to be top priority for you. And then if you can, set up that automatic transfer into your savings accounts. Like we said, pay yourself first. Do your future self a favor, even though you haven't met them yet. They are going to be there, and they will thank you for it. Increase that payment for on a debt on a credit card or on a loan by $25. And then maybe look if you do pull up one of those apps that helps you with the saving strategies. Maybe cancel a subscription that you don't use anymore. All of these are great things to be able to even push for that budget and that debt strategy that's going to work best for you and align with your goals and what you're looking for with your future in your life. Ange pulled up a couple resources. These are great opportunities for you to be able to like Quicken for budgeting, and they do have an app as well, budget tracker for simple category monitoring within those categories that we talked about. Bankrate, I know, has different loan payoff, interest, savings growth. So if you do have those loans or outstanding debts, don't be afraid to call in on those debts and see if you can strategize and take advantage of any promotionals or interest rate checks or cuts that they might have available to you. You won't. The worst that can happen is they say no, and then you know. But those rules will change. Same thing with student loans, especially with political things changing. You can see a lot of opportunity for debt forgiveness, things like that, different programs, all those things. You want to make sure you're constantly checking in on those outstanding opportunities. Just because you looked at it when you graduated college doesn't mean the same rules apply today. So make sure you keep checking in on those rules and what applies.
One of the questions that came up, Ethan, is should I break down each paycheck into gross plus deductions or just budget based on net pay? I budget on my take home pay. So I budget on my net pay. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would say always budget based on take home pay.
Yeah.
And the only exception to that is if you have contributions that are going in to a retirement account that might differ based on tax. But for the most part, for simple budgeting, you're going to want to go ahead and just do net pay. And that will give you the best clarity. If you take gross pay and then you take all your bills post that, you're going to have a slightly skewed version of what you actually have available to you. And you probably will end up overspending.
And I wanted to add a comment that Kevin mentioned is that if you want to build wealth, you have to spend less than you make, period. If not, you'll remain stuck in debt instead of building wealth. And I totally agree with that. I do. I personally limit um, just frivolous spending. I sleep on an item. I know I have to buy some new couches. I really do. But I'm kind of waiting to see if I get some discount. I don't want to pay full price for my couches. So I'm kind of been researching, looking at different sites that can offer me cost savings. But I agree, building wealth means spending less than what you make to keep yourself on track. So thank you. Value added, Kevin. I appreciate that comment. And let's see, do you recommend any high interest rate savings accounts? What are your thoughts on that, Ethan?
There's going to be a few. I would first check with your bank to see if there is one made available to you. And then rates will change. Different banks offer different amounts at different times. So you won't always have the exact same rate available to you. Like if someone tells you that one bank is better than another, it might have been the case when they signed up, may not be the case now. So just I would look around and see what high yield savings accounts are available to you. But this is, I will say, if you are building up that emergency fund, which everybody should be, a high yield savings account is a great option and should be looked into to maximize on those dollars that are just sitting there in a liquid fund.
Yes, so I don't see any other questions. Although there is a question that I would like to take back, that I would like to see if we can get back um, to the person. And again, it's Kalina. If you can maybe reach out to us, because she would like to know more about resources to manage debt with critical illness. And I know that uh, medical expenses sometimes could be a lot of people's highest amount of debt. And so I wonder if you have any input on that, Ethan, or it's something that we can certainly have the person reach out to us and we can find ways that we can handle that kind of debt because I know it's out there for a lot of folks.
Yeah, please reach out to our education line here or to us individually, and we'll get you. That is, since it's more individual, we will get that
Yeah.
squared away, and that's better for a personal conversation. So we could look at that and see specifically how to help with that case.
Perfect, perfect. And us, I don't see any other questions or comments, but I sure love the interaction too, because again, this is a topic that a lot of people shy away, Ethan, when we were talking about budgeting, um, and sometimes we're not comfortable asking the questions, but through this conversation, the overall theme behind this conversation is having a plan and not winging it. I find that financial and budgets and creating our financial plan and vision and goals is not something that you can just wing it. You have to have a plan of action. You have to have things written down, whether it's on a fancy spreadsheet, on a fancy worksheet, or simply on the notes on your phone. And simple things that can carry us along the way. When I go shopping, Ethan, I follow a couple rules. Number one, I don't go to the supermarket thirsty and I don't go to the supermarket hungry because when I do, and I'm thirsty, I end up buying all the drinks available to man in the supermarket and I forget my budget. When I'm hungry, I end up buying all the goodies.
Oh
So,
yeah.
some strategies that I find that work for me. And so keep it simple, see what works, but it's important to have a plan and not just winging it.
Yes, I'm not allowed to the grocery store anymore. That's so I'm with you there. Our bill goes up about twice as much if I go and I want the snacks. But like you said, financial wellness it's not about perfection, right? It's about
Yeah.
progress. So even just one step, one new habit today is going to help you move forward in the right direction. But thank you everybody for your engagement, your openness to hop in the chat and ask questions.
Yeah.
Andrew and I love it and we're able to when we're able to help and even make a small difference hopefully in your financial future and you're not on this journey alone. We're here to help in every step of the way. So if you do have questions, if you do have additional needs, feel free to reach out to those emails that you saw or our financial wellness team, and we'll be able to get connected with you and answer any questions in the future.
Yeah, and stay tuned because future seasons are coming. I know the brand new. Can you believe this is the end of the year already? But we're building up our sessions for next year. Stay tuned. We'll email folks with the new topics that will be coming in. So stay tuned for that. And I just want to thank you for your partnership in presenting today, Ethan. I really
Well, thanks,
appreciate your
Anne.
time.
Pleasure. It's
Yeah,
a pleasure as always.
yeah. And thank you so much, everybody, for joining. This will be the end of the session. Enjoy the holidays if you're celebrating, and we'll see you next year.